2008. I'm deployed to Iraq. We go out on a target one night, engage a shooter inside of a building. There was a gunfire exchange. I see a couple rounds hit the ground in front of me. One round hits my leg. I can feel that my foot isn't working exactly correctly, but because I still have pants on and everything, I can't see the extent of the wound, but I can feel that there's a substantial amount of blood going into my boot. So the next day, they're changing the dressing on my leg, and I get a good first look at the leg and the extent of the injury. There was about a fist-sized hole in the side of my calf. You go through those moments and I just think to myself, like, this can't be how my career ends. My career doesn't end with a giant bloody hole on my leg, flying on a medevac helicopter to a hospital, and that's not the last thing that I do as an operational Navy SEAL.
What does the body do when that happens? Like, that is missing muscle. What comes next?
That's trauma.
Alex, Gus, I am super excited to be here right now. We have been on a trip together. We've been traveling, we've been speaking. We started in Tampa, right now we're in Miami, and I had to take a moment to get us around a table to share a little bit of what it's like to be with us all the time, because what I have found is that when I have the two of you together, nothing except interesting things get talked about, and I really want to share that with everyone. More specifically, what I want to start with is your story of getting shot, rehabilitating the wound, how it transformed your mindset, how it transformed your exercise, and I really want, Alex, your opinions along the way on anything that strikes up your curiosity. Ask any question you want, interrupt them anytime you want, because I really do want to hear how the two of you go through the process of geeking out about this incredible moment in your life.
Yeah, so I guess we'll start from the beginning. 2008, I'm deployed to Iraq, one of my first combat deployments, so I'm still pretty new in the Navy. I'd only been in for about 6 years. We go out on a target one night, engage a shooter inside of a building. I put myself into a security position in the courtyard. There was a gunfire exchange in the door. As I turn around and start moving towards the door, I see a couple rounds hit the ground in front of me. One round hits my leg. I'm immediately aware of it. It felt like getting hit with a sledgehammer or something. Second round hits my plate, and then a couple rounds kind of snap by my head. So I kind of take stock in that moment, what's happened. I can feel that my foot isn't working exactly correctly, but because I still have pants on and everything, I can't see the extent of the wound, but I can feel that there's a substantial amount of blood going into my boot. And I moved myself to a secure place in the courtyard behind a little animal pen kind of structure, put a tourniquet over my knee, stay engaged in the gunfight, make a radio call. Hey, this is my shooter number. This is what happened. I'm hit. We have a couple of guys down. A couple of our teammates came down where they were able to engage and neutralize the guy in the house, and then we were able to move off target. Later on in the hospital, we go to the hospital. They put me on a gurney, put me under, and I don't really get a good look at the wound until the next day. So I can't really take stock of exactly what's happened. I just know that on target that night, I felt that I lost some use of my foot, and that I knew that there was a substantial amount of blood coming out of my leg. So the next day, they're changing the dressing on my leg, and I get a good first look at the leg and the extent of the injury. And it's pretty shocking to me in that moment, because I hadn't seen it, but I didn't imagine that it was going to be what I was looking at. There was about a fist-sized hole in the side of my calf. The bullet had made a front entry and rear exit and taken a substantial amount of tissue with it, as well as like splitting the skin on the side of the leg from the pressure of the bullet passing through.
So before you could actually see it, 24 hours, like what was the pain like for a fist-sized hole in your calf?
So, and I wouldn't realize this until later, but the bullet had severed the superficial peroneal nerve. So the pain wasn't, I felt the immediate impact. Like I said, it felt like getting hit with a sledgehammer or a baseball bat in the leg. It kind of spun my body around. But I was more acutely aware of the fact that I couldn't move my foot correctly. I was kind of step and drag, and I could feel that I was losing blood.
Like your foot was like a brick.
Yeah. So, and you don't know what you don't know, right? I actually, in my mind, was imagining that the bullet had hit me from a different angle. And until I saw the wound, I didn't really understand the path that the bullet had taken, if that makes sense. So you're trying to take stock of that, but I'm also not trying to think too much about the fact that I got hit, and trying to think, hey, I'm still in this gunfight.
You got stuff to do.
There's still a dude who for some reason has now stopped shooting at me, and I got to get myself to a secure position and prepare to return fire, or if he's going to come out of the building or whatever, and you got to stay engaged. Rule number one in warfare is you win the fight, right? Before you take care of anything else, win the gunfight. So that happens. Next day I'm in the hospital. It happened to be Super Bowl Sunday, the night that we went out on the operation, February 4th. And so the next day I'm in the hospital, we do this dressing change, and then they're playing the replay of the Super Bowl on AFN, the Armed Forces Network. And so we're kind of, in a semi-drugged out state with morphine and Dilaudid coursing through our veins. And I'm looking at this giant hole in my leg and kind of trying to figure out, in my mind, a few things were happening at the same time. Number one, thank God I'm still alive. I'm here in the hospital. Number two is, I need to call my significant other and I need to call my parents at some point and let them know that this thing has happened. And that, I think I probably had more anxiety about that than I did about actually being injured. Cause I'm like, this is going to be heavy news, right? For my wife at the time and my mom to deal with, probably my dad too. And then number three, thinking what's going to become of my career, right? I'm looking at this injury that in my mind is sort of career ending from what I was thinking at at that point. I'm sitting there in the hospital. I had quite a bit of edema in the leg, right? Your body had shunted a lot of fluid to the leg, so it's pretty full and swollen. And I couldn't really move my foot, and they were alternating with nerve blocks to prevent the pain.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And so I kind of was like, well, I can't really use my leg now currently in a way that's going to allow me to continue to do this job.
So you were a Navy SEAL.
Mm-hmm.
This was, how long after BUDS did this happen?
About 6 years. So I went through BUDS in 2002. This was my third combat deployment in February of 2008.
So what is that in SEAL terminology?
Mm-hmm.
Is that early career, mid-career? Is that an important point because something else is about to happen next? What does that mean?
So for me, 6 years would have been pretty early career, but I was already looking to make the transition from the regular SEAL teams over to Naval Special Warfare Development Group. In fact, I had already done the screening to go into the next selection class. So there were already career milestones that I was sort of looking at checking off, and I already had, when those kind of things happen, and there's never a good time to be injured.
Yeah.
But you kind of have this trajectory of life that you map out to yourself, right? Whatever it is that you're doing. I have this trajectory, I have these steps, I have these milestones I want to meet. And something like that happens, and it's this sort of unpredicted, unforeseeable event that is now happening that in my mind is changing the entire trajectory, hard stop on all of my plans. And maybe I'm going to have to submit college applications or go look for another job or prepare to get, med boarded and medically retired from the Navy. In my mind, these are the things that I'm going through. And then also having to deal with the fact that I'm going to have to alert my loved ones to the fact that this had happened. And unfortunately, we also lost two of our teammates that night. So I'm processing that too, right? So it was a lot of stuff to deal with. And then you kind of are in this semi out of your normal state of mind because Dilaudid is a really strong opiate painkiller. And so I'm a little bit euphoric and trying to be happy and think about all these things. That really strange experience. And then also the Super Bowl is playing, and it was the year the Patriots were undefeated, 18-0.
I've got to say, I can't believe you're remembering anything about the game. It's mind-boggling, right?
Right.
Well, it was such a landmark game, I guess, if you want to call, because it was the undefeated 18-0 Tom Brady led Patriots lost to Eli Manning and the sort of also ran 9-7, not that great of a team, New York Giants on a miracle helmet catch, one-handed helmet catch. And we missed the game to go out on target that night. So I'm watching it with a bunch of Marines who had been blown up in a convoy the night before. And like I said, we're all, on heavy painkillers. And so we're all watching this game and kind of did that just happen? Did they really just lose? Did the Patriots just lose? Is this a replay of some other Super Bowl? Because it's it's not really computing with all the drugs in our system that this has just happened. And then it's just one of those things that I was wow, I missed maybe one of the best, most amazing Super Bowl finishes in Super Bowl history to go out on target. And then, then I ended how it ended. So
you're sitting in a bed watching the Super Bowl 24 hours after?
24 hours, yep.
And when would you say the reality of the wound started to set in? That's a big chunk of calf to be shot out. And I'm just going to say right now, I have very small calves.
Yeah.
I don't think I have enough calf muscle for a fist-sized hole.
Like the whole thing would have been gone.
Yeah.
It was, yeah, I think I really took stock of it the first time I saw it. Like the first time they came in. And so I woke up from from being in the surgery, and I had a big dressing covering it, and they had like a wound vac tube that was going in to siphon off some of the fluid that was coming out of the wound. So I wasn't really seeing it. At that point, the actual pain registered, not just the surprise of having gotten shot, plus the adrenaline and everything. And so it's throbbing, and it's quite a bit of discomfort, and I'm looking at it, and I'm kind of trying to make sense of what it looks like with this dressing on there. They came in to do the dressing change, and here's this huge hole in my leg that I'm like, oh no. I'm thinking whatever I thought it was before, this is worse.
And you had a lot of knowledge, a lot of background, training, exercise, both SEAL driven and personally driven in kinesiology and in physical fitness and in physical training, personal training. Did you think to yourself, I know what to do here? Or did you think to yourself, this could be the end of walking? Like, where were you on that spectrum?
No, I think sort of the anatomy and physiology background helped me, because then when I was looking at this hole, I'm identifying the muscle bellies that I can see inside of there's my soleus and my tibialis anterior and my gastrocnemius.
Still connected.
All of those things, well, they weren't connected. There was a big space between them. And
It's like the cross-cut section in an anatomy book.
Yeah.
Only you're seeing it on your body.
Yeah.
Which is
nuts. Person.
In fact, I have a picture of it. I'd love to show you. You can process this while I'm talking about it.
Who took this picture? Was this you?
So I handed the camera to the nurse who's doing the dressing change. I'm, again, pretty high. As we'll see in the picture. And I'm like, can you take a picture of this?
Wow.
And the gal was like, yeah, I guess. So there's me and there's the injury.
Ooh, that's juicy.
So I'm looking again at this giant hole, and a couple of things are happening. I'm thinking to myself, okay, I see that there's a substantial amount of soft tissue damage, but no bone damage. In my mind, that's good. What you can't see is the nerve damage or potentially other connective tissue damage that might hinder or impair your ability to get back to full functionality. And so I'm thinking, I can't move my foot the way I want to. So in my mind, some potential nerve damage or possibly connective tissue damage. But I'm also thinking like, well, there's a lot of swelling. We need to give time for the swelling to go down and let the muscles heal. But I can see there's a big space between where the top of my soleus and gastrocnemius.
Lots of muscle fibers disconnected.
Lots of tissue gone.
Lots of arteries and veins.
I can't believe you are smiling. Like that speaks to how powerful these drugs must have been.
Yeah.
You are like smiling with a thumb up.
Yeah. I also was thinking like I might have to send this picture to my parents, and I want them to know I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm in a good frame.
It looks bad, but I'm okay.
It's bad, but I'm gonna make it. And when I did end up calling my parents, that was pretty much what I said. I said, Mom, Dad, I want you to know, like, I've got some bad news. I got shot, but I'm okay, and I'm going to be coming home. And that was literally how the conversation went. And there was like crickets on the other end of the phone.
Wow.
And it's kind of like, what do you say to that? Except like, oh, see you when you get back.
So you've got this giant missing part of your leg.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks like something out of the movies, which makes me respect how accurate the movies might be sometimes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That's real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you were also aspiring for DEVGRU. You were getting ready for SEAL Team 6.
Yeah.
When I have to imagine SEALs get shot, it's a stupid thing to say out loud, but I don't think anybody thinks about it. SEALs must get shot. Is a wound like this generally something that ends your career in the SEALs? Or is this something that you were like, I think I got this? Like, where was your mindset?
So it really depends. And up until that point, I didn't know personally anybody who had gotten shot that didn't die. So it was like I didn't know really anybody who had sustained severe like gunshot or blast traumas that stayed active and got back to work. In the aftermath of that, I ended up meeting quite a few who had been shot, some of them a number of times. One of my friends was shot through, actually in a sort of freak accident, was shot with one round through both calves.
Wow.
He got hit from the side, went in one, out of that one, and into the back of the other calf. So I started meeting people as the recovery process was going that are saying, you know, I've been through this. I've been where you are. I've had nerve damage. I've had this. And that was a positive for me because I could get some perspective on that there is a way to recover. There's like a way back. There's like a road and things that you can do. But until you know the full extent of what's damaged in you, it's hard to know exactly how that rehabilitation is going to go, what that physical therapy process looks like, right? So you might get shot through the gut and miss all your vital organs and go out your back.
Wow.
Or you might get shot in the gut and it hits 3 vital organs and you die, right? And that can be the same caliber round. And so it's terminal ballistics are very strange. I have always considered myself super fortunate, despite what you might see in the picture, that it only did soft tissue and nerve damage, and that I was in relatively short order able to start getting back to rehabbing and getting back on the career trajectory that I wanted to follow, which was getting ready to screen and go back to.
Yeah, I was going to follow up. So there was no bone damage. Your tibia, fibula were fine?
Yeah, so missed by maybe 1/4 of an inch, impacting the bone. So again, game of inches, very, very fortunate that missed. And like I said, there was a second round that hit the ceramic chest plate that I was wearing just about 1/4 inch, maybe 1/2 inch from the top of the chest plate, which if it had shot into my clavicle area, it could have hit, you know, arteries, veins, could have bounced off something and potentially been a lethal round. So really, you know, saved my career by maybe 1/4 inch, saved my life by maybe another 1/2 inch.
So it looks like it literally looks like somebody scooped a handful of your calf out of you.
Yeah.
What does the body do when that happens? Like that is missing muscle. It's way more than just missing skin. It's missing muscle and everything that goes along with it, right?
Yeah.
All the muscle fibers are gone. What comes next?
That's trauma. That is physical trauma. So the body recruits literally every resource it can to try to save the area. And so like the inflammation that you were talking about, like that's the carrier for all that stuff. All the inflammatory cytokines, every tiny little thing your body could shuttle to that area and start the rebuild process. That's what it was up to. But man, when you separate that much tissue, that process doesn't happen all by itself. It's quite the process. So his body's like trying to gear up as if you were a fetus in the womb, trying to gear up to reconnect satellite cells along fibers to reestablish the ability to move, like all those things. It's a very crazy process.
What was that like from your point of view?
So I had a really good team of doctors. I was at 3 different hospitals. I was in Balad, Iraq first for a couple days, then Landstuhl, Germany, and then eventually Portsmouth Naval Hospital. And my teams of doctors did a really good job of explaining what the process of recovery is going to look like, right? The first is, like Alex was saying, you know, your body's going to allocate all of its resources to healing that thing. It's going to try and rebuild tissue. It's going to try and, you know, regenerate nerve function. It's going to try and maintain the vascularity that's there or reroute the blood flow because it still has to get blood to your foot. Now it's not going through the outside of your calf. So how does it do that? And the body's really an incredible thing when it comes to repairing itself and saying like, hey, we need to fix this so we can get back to being a functional being. And so the doctor said, you know, what's going to happen is we're going to leave this wound vac dressing that's going to siphon off fluid so the wound doesn't get infected. And then while the wound vac is on there, the tissue is going to granulate. It's going to fill in as much as it's going to fill in. As much of that tissue as it can rebuild, it will organically. Once that process of granulation was at a point where they were satisfied that it was about as much as we were going to get, it needs a new layer of skin. And so they said at that point, we'll take a portion of skin from your thigh and we'll graft it over that wound. And your body will adopt that skin as if it was just skin growing over the open wound, the granulated tissue, which I have some other pictures I'll show you guys another time of the tissue as it's granulating and then the skin graft as it's overlaid.
Yeah.
And they punch a bunch of holes. They basically take the skin, peel it off your leg with a cheese grater type machine, and then they run it through another machine that stretches it, like punctures a bunch of holes in it so that the fluid underneath can get siphoned off, so it doesn't turn into just like a big blister of this fluid. It's big bubble, a big infected bubble.
CIA believes that all people are born with a spy secret superpower. For some people, that means they can win deals. For others, they can spot liars. Some can even seduce lovers. I built a free 3-minute test to help reveal to you exactly what your secret hidden superpower is. All you have to do is click on the link in the description below, take the test, and start using your spy superpower to stay ahead of 99% of people.
So, you know, listening to the doctors, and again, like you said, with my background, and I had studied kinesiology, anatomy, physiology. I wanted to go into that, some branch of the medical profession. It was fascinating to me to listen to the doctors explain it, and I was really glad that they knew what they were talking about. And the further I got down that road of recovery, the more I realized, like, hey, there's a very real possibility that I can get back to doing my job.
And were the doctors optimistic as well?
Yeah, it's hard to tell in the early stages if they're being optimistic or if it's just good bedside manner and they're just trying not to be discouraging with you. Because I had you imagine that they're looking at the same giant hole that I'm looking at, and they're like, "Oh no," you know, and they're just not. They're disguising it better. But I do think they were optimistic, and you know, there was a couple of times I remember when I was in Germany, they would bring in other doctors from the orthopedic, and the gunshot wound clinics. And they would bring them in and they'd be like, this is what good, healthy tissue looks like. And you see the blood flow and it's red and here's the density and all these other things, which to me was like, oh, good.
Oh, good.
At least it's good tissue, right? It's not like a 50-year smoker or something with like half dead non-vascular tissue and they're trying to heal. I was like, all right, at least that's a step in the right direction. But they were optimistic. And at every step of the way, they kind of gave me a real assessment of what was going on, which I appreciated. The fact that they were candid and honest and saying, hey, here's some limitations, here's some things that are happening, here's some things we don't know but we're looking to find out, and here's potential, like, you know, route A, B, and C courses of action that we can take based on our findings.
So it sounds like what we've talked about so far is that the body is starting to rebuild the muscle connections, right? What was the word that you guys used? When it's starting to create more muscle fibers that reach back to close.
The word that I kept hearing was your tissue will granulate. It'll fill in.
Granulate. Yeah. But there was more happening than just muscle. So was there any other damage done than just muscle? And do those things granulate and grow back?
So we use the term, so there's hypertrophy. Most people have heard of that with regard to weight training to grow your muscle, but there's hyperplasia too. That is the proliferation of new cells, right? So like your injury, there's muscle there, but there's also nerve fibers. There's also arteries. There's also veins. There's no, bone fragments or anything. You said that wasn't a thing for you. So your body was trying to rebuild several different types of tissue, hyperplasia, regrow new cells at the same time, which is that. Were you exhausted? Like, was this an exhausting process? Because in my mind, I'm thinking like how many resources your body was putting toward that area to try to fix things up. And I know you're used to being a pretty active guy and you're probably laid up a bit, but isn't that an exhausting process?
It's kind of hard to tell because I'm in bed all the time. And so I didn't particularly like not being active, but I'm also, when I was in Iraq, I was on Dilaudid. They moved me to Launchstool and it switched to morphine. And then when they moved me over to Portsmouth, it was a lesser dose of morphine. So it's kind of hard to tell really what state you're in. I felt tired a lot of the time, but I thought, well, this might be some depression. This might be it's just the effect of the opiates. But I lost a ton of weight. So I went into the hospital at probably 195 or 198 pounds. When I got discharged from Portsmouth about 3.5 weeks later, I had lost 40 pounds.
Whoa. Wow.
Something like that. Yeah. And I mean, it was just, I couldn't eat. I slept a lot of the time. Some of the drugs that they had me on made me lose my appetite or made me not able to hold food down and in and out of surgery.
So much energy.
And then, that's it. It's a healing process. Just all your body's resources have gone away from muscle hypertrophy and working out and all those things. And like, we just need to fix this. Yeah.
Yeah. So what about function in your foot? How did that, as the process of recovery played out, what did you find in your body?
So they knew that the superficial perineal nerve was damaged. You ever run a nerve that runs the length of your leg at about the knee joint? It branches into 2 branches. That's called the perineal nerve. It branches off. One goes deep, runs down the tib fib, and then the other one goes to the outside. So you have your deep perineal and your superficial perineal. The superficial perineal nerve was severed, and that controls your ability to balance your foot, perform a function called eversion, which is lifting the outside of your foot.
Not just severed like cut either. Severed by like the whole length of the wound, right?
Yep. When I went to the hospital initially, they performed a surgery called a debridement, where they cut away the dead tissue and the dirt and anything else that had gotten in there on the battlefield, just to give them a nice clean wound to work with. But essentially, by the time they were done with the debridement, there was a space of about 4 inches between the 2 nerve endings in my superficial perineal nerve.
Wow.
And it's really hard to tell, again, with everything that the body is doing to heal that. It's hard for the doctors to say definitively right away, the perineal nerve is gone, you're going to lose function, eversion. And so it really wasn't until probably around the time in late March when I had my skin graft that they conducted a nerve conduction test and determined that the perineal superficial perineal nerve function was gone and probably wasn't coming back. And so at that point, we started exploring options of basically the 2 options that they gave me were we can try to do a nerve graft and take a piece of your sciatic nerve, cut it out, plug it in, graft it in. There's about a 20% chance that it'll take. And if it does take, there's about an 18-month to 24-month window that we won't know if you're going to get full function back. And I said, well, I want to get healthy. I want to get over to DEVGRU. I've got these career milestones that I want to hit. What I don't want to do is be stuck for 2 years potentially, not being able to train and not knowing if I'm going to get function back.
When at this point, so the ankle can move, eversion and inversion. That's like this, but then there's plantar flexion and dorsiflexion. And after the fact, seeing you walk around, like you obviously have those things. Did you know at the time that you could still walk normal, that you could still push off your toe, and that you could still walk heel to toe by pulling your toes up?
So by the time we did the nerve conduction test, I knew that I could push down and push up, plantar flexion and dorsiflexion. I knew my foot worked that way. But when I went to plantar flex, or like push off of my foot, the outside of the foot would roll. And I kept trying to control that and lift the outside of my foot or adjust the way that I was stepping. And they put me in a number of different, what they call dorsiflex assist braces, which is just a brace that goes in my shoe and runs up the length of my calf and helps my foot lift. It can't lift on its own. But that's a temporary thing, right? I don't want to wear that forever. I don't want to lose function. And so I had a really phenomenal orthopedic surgeon called Dr. Joel Stewart. And he came in and he said, look, there's this other thing that I think we can do, this other surgery that I think we can perform that's going to give you this function back. He's like, it's not a surgery that really has been tested, but I think it'll work. And he said, I think if we take your flexor hallucis longus tendon, your FHL tendon from under your big toe, and we post it to your cuboid bone, which is a bone on the outside of my foot, I think that by thinking about pushing down your big toe, you will be able to evert or lift the outside of your foot.
So basically just bypass the whole mechanism altogether, just like add a little strap of support.
Yep.
That's cool.
That's exactly it. And so I am conceptualizing as he's telling me this, and I'm like, so, okay, big toe tendon's going to come around the back of my foot, get screwed into my cuboid bone. It's going to get sutured together with the tendons that are still there intact, but aren't getting nerve input. So it has a little bit of robustness. And then I'm going to learn to lift my foot by thinking about pushing my big toe down. Push the big toe down, foot comes up. And every step, I'm going to think about pushing my big toe down and the outside of my foot's hitting.
That makes sense why you were talking about when I run, my toes grab the ground. It keeps you from rolling your ankle.
To this day, and it's subconscious now, right? It's been so many steps and so many miles but it still happens. Like I naturally think about gripping the ground with my toes, pushing down to lift my foot than when I step. And it just is something that my body does now. And this was one of the really incredible things that I found throughout, as I was trying not to be too pessimistic about losing my career possibly or not being able to walk right, is just how phenomenal the body is at like, hey, we don't have these pathways, these venous pathways to get blood to your foot anymore. We're just going to reroute it and send it over here. And so, you see some new vascularity on the inside of the calf and some other different things. I'm like, okay, the body's adjusting. It's sending things, new neural pathways. That the nerve damage of my superficial peroneal nerve affected the sensation on the tops of a lot of my toes. But then new neural pathways developed that allowed me to move those toes independently. And so you experience this regeneration or this creation of new pathways. And that was something that was really, I guess, incredible for me to see. It wasn't something you do consciously, right? My body is just like, hey, we need to get sensation back there. We're going to create these new things.
Well, your conscious decision, though, was to keep doing it.
To keep doing it.
Because if you don't use it, you lose it, right?
Yep.
So the doctor can perform this very intelligent, creative surgery that could give you the opportunity to walk normal again, through a, like I said, very creative way of getting it done. But if you didn't walk, like if you didn't regularly get on your feet, then there's no reason for your body to innervate the area. There's no reason for your body to add new capillaries. And then it also doesn't become like a normal thing for you to, if I'm going to walk, I push my toe down, therefore I don't roll my ankles every time I step on something strange.
Yeah, and I think that's a lesson that carries over into a lot of other things, is like, if you just expect things to happen without you going out and putting the work in, you're fooling yourself.
Mm-hmm. I agree that there's all sorts of applications of this lesson, but we are not through the story. And this is so important to me because this was 6 years into your career. You just retired after a 22-year career. So what happened afterwards? I'm assuming, like many people, that when you hear this story, when anybody listening is hearing this story, we're now celebrating, hooray, Gus gets to walk again. But that's not really how it ends. You don't just get to walk. You do so much more.
For better or worse, I became very singularly focused after the injury, right? Before I was dedicated in my career. There were things I wanted to do. I had goals. But I was also married at the time, and I kind of had other things going on in my life. After the injury, I really became it was like blinders to every other facet of my life. And all I wanted to think about was going to physical therapy, getting back to good, getting back to the point where not only could I walk, but I could go past this very rigorous physical screening test to be able to get over to the selection process to get to development group. And so for me, that was all consuming. And I had a phenomenal team of physical therapists who kept motivating me. And I think one of the things for me that was the biggest motivational factor was the attitude of my teammates, current and former, who there was never a moment of doubt, when they had seen my injury, they saw what I went through. But every time I would talk to one of them, it wasn't like, oh, well, I hope you're okay, or, oh, I hope you get to walk again. It was, when do we get you back? When are you going to be back in the team? When are you going to be back in the train? When are you going to be ready to deploy? And that to me was very motivational, because it's like, there's never a doubt for these guys, right? These are guys I went through Hell Week with. These are guys I graduated buds with. These are guys I deployed with. And for them, it was just like, we want you back. We believe in you. We know you're strong enough to get through this. So let's get it done. And, that changes your mindset about things. In the moments that I was maybe had some doubt in my own mind, I knew that like my teammates and my friends didn't have those same doubts. Or if they did, they just weren't willing to acquiesce to them. You know what I mean? So that was in stark contrast to a lot of my friends and family who were outside of the Navy, who were like, why don't you just retire? Like, you've given enough. This injury, it was a close call. You went forward, you served your country, maybe just hang it up now. And so it was interesting to me to sort of juxtapose those two ideas about what comes next for me. And I was really happy that I had support on both sides, but I knew that all I wanted to do was get back. And in my mind, you go through those moments and I just think to myself, like, this can't be how my career ends. My career doesn't end with a giant bloody hole on my leg, flying on a medevac helicopter to a hospital. And right, that's not the last thing that I do as an operational Navy SEAL. And so I was very focused on getting back. 10 months roughly after my injury, I rescreened for the selection process for Naval Special Warfare Development Group. Got picked up, passed the screen test, and actually in that 10 months, I cut a minute and a half off my 3-mile run time after my injury from what my run had been before. And up to the day I retired, I joked with my my PT at the command about that. He's like, we must have made you more aerodynamic or something by taking that piece of your leg out because you got fat.
There's that doggone tendon around the.
It was, no, something in there was slowing me down. But I think number one, it was that they were training me intelligently the right way, which is a testament to having somebody who knows the right modalities and how to get you back. And it wasn't just like, it was like I went from hospital bed to screening for an elite segment of Navy SEALs in 10 months. Like from not knowing if I would walk again to being able to complete this extremely rigorous physical screening test.
Were you there in the moment? Like, did you realize that when you were screening for SEAL Team 6? Did you realize 10 months ago I was in this thing and this is kind of astonishing? Or were you so singularly focused, you were like, screen and pass, screen and pass, screen and pass, done, next objective, next objective, next objective? Like, how did your brain work?
There was a moment when I finished the 3-mile time run and the instructors gave me the time. And I took stock of the fact that I was almost a full minute and a half faster than I had run a year prior to the injury. And I was proud of myself in that moment, but I was kind of astounded that in that short of a period of time that this was able to happen. And, I think you experience a number of emotions. Number one, I'm happy that I passed the screen test, because in your mind, that's a doubt, right? Is like, this is the thing I want to do. This is the whole reason I dedicated myself to coming back. If I fail, that's big. But then number two was just a feeling of tremendous gratitude to the orthopedic surgeon who took a chance on a surgery that that was predominantly untested, on my physical therapists who were like, hey, this is what we need to do. And I'm telling you, like, I spent maybe the first 2 or 3 weeks of physical therapy just scrunching a towel with my toes to make sure that my toes worked. I couldn't do anything else. So it's like they would flatten out a hand towel and I would put my foot on it and I would scrunch it up, and like maddeningly slow,
And then reset.
the towel. And it was just like in the first couple iterations of that, I couldn't do it. My toes wouldn't work the way I wanted. One was kind of doing this and these other ones were sort of frozen in limbo. And it's just like, I'm thinking,
Nothing more humbling.
move toes, and then to 10 months later, be able to perform this physical test. So yeah, a lot of gratitude at people who were willing to. It wasn't just my frustrating hours. I mean, for my PTs too. And Alex, you probably know this when you're working with a client who's in a tough situation. You have to have a tremendous amount of patience, and you have to care a whole lot about that person to see them through those hours. So yeah, I have always felt an amazing amount of gratitude to my physical therapist and to the whole team that worked with me. And, one of the guys who was one of my physical therapists left. He has a job in the NFL now. He's still a very, very good friend. My orthopedic surgeon did my tendon transfer surgery and then did my tendon transfer surgery on his last day in the OR as a Navy surgeon before he went into private practice. So he was like on his way out of the Navy, and he didn't just kick it to another doctor and be like, this is my last day, I'm out. He was like, we're going to do this surgery this morning, and this is my last day in the Navy. And yeah, so you realize in those moments, like how much it takes a team of, so I would love to sit here and take credit and be like, I got myself back on my feet. I took that challenge and kicked it in the ass, but it was like a whole bunch of people who really knew what they were doing and cared a whole bunch about me, and a bunch of teammates who were incredibly supportive to put me back in the right mindset and get me going in the right direction.
There's this saying in one of my kids' children books. It's the Lorax. It's the end of the Lorax. And there's this statement in there that says, unless someone cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to change. Mm-hmm. It's not. Mm-hmm. And every time I read that, it freezes me in my tracks, right? But what you have described in this entire story is people who care. Mm-hmm. PT who care, doctors who care, teammates who care. You care. I mean, we haven't delved into the details with your family and everything else. They all cared, right? But the thing that's amazing to me is how many people would have just caved. That would have been crushing news. The way you tell this story, if you were emotionally crushed, could be counted in hours, not days, not weeks, not years.
Sure.
You made a decision, and then you had a new singular focus. And like you said, for well or for ill, and as I'm sure plays out, there are both well and ill aspects of a singular focus like that. But you then went on to spend 16 years serving in the most elite unit of the Navy SEALs, retiring after 22 years of service. And in the first, the first fifth of your career?
Yeah.
You took what was a terrible combat wound.
And then, bless her heart, my mother endured 16 years after me getting shot of every time I deployed, worrying about that it was going to happen again. And, I used to joke and be lighthearted with her and be like, nobody gets shot twice. And she didn't think that was as funny as I thought it was. But, it's that support network. There was never a negative moment even. And I know that she, when she came to my retirement, I could almost hear the audible sigh of relief that it's over, But she never spoke a discouraging word. She never said anything like, why don't you just stop? Why do you have to do this? You know what you put me through. There was never that. It was always like, okay, I laugh because she used to, every time I was getting ready to deploy, she would say, be safe. And I said, well, that's not the inherent nature of what we do. Within the constraints of my job, I'll be as safe as I can be. But I do think about that. And there's really not a day that goes by that I don't think about how many people supported and made the next 16 years, which were far and away the most productive, most rewarding, most operational, most learning, developing years of my SEAL career. And it wouldn't have been possible without that core group of people who got me through that moment, and there were some dark days.
I am incredibly impressed with you. I am incredibly impressed with the community that must exist within Navy SEALs that the rest of us don't even know about, right? We'll never see it. We'll never feel it. We'll never understand it. We'll hear about it and never be able to conceptualize it, what you must actually have inside that group. But I am also blown away by the human fucking body. That the body could self-repair, could recreate, could be treated like a machine that connects a tendon across a foot and be trained again to work at an elite level. Think about how many people give up on elite with totally functioning bodies.
Yeah.
You didn't give up on elite, and you basically had to jury rig a tendon across the bottom of your foot.
And there's still a pretty sizable hole there. One of the things that I think brought it full circle for me was, like I said, I was studying kinesiology, nutrition, and basically, like, when I was in college, I wanted to be then where like Alex is now. So 9/11 changed that for me. I came into the Navy, but to be sort of the end user, the recipient of care of people who were doing the profession that I wanted to do, and how like their dedication, their professional knowledge, their ability to take me, train me intelligently, and get me from hospital gurney to dev group ready in 10 months, I think is a testament to those people, how much they care and how good they are at their job, right? And that's something I've been able to see since coming on with Everyday Spy. When we hear from the people who Alex is training, who are changing their lives, who are losing, would you say that one client of yours lost 40 pounds or something like that? And I think maybe those people don't know in this moment, but in a year or 2 or 10, they'll reflect on this and be like, man, Alex cared about me so much and knew his job so well. And that to me is that was the thing, I guess, maybe that I was probably hoping for when I was down that course of study years before I came into the Navy. But it's very rewarding to have gone through it, as the patient, and then to see somebody on the other end doing that job extremely well.
I want to get into some final thoughts because this has been just an incredible story, and there's a lot to reflect and chew on in this, not the least of which is just trying to think what it must have been like to be you, what it must have been like from the moment that you felt your boot filling with moisture that you had to assume was blood in the middle of a firefight, all the way through to the realization that you were wounded and 2 of your brothers had died, and then the realization of seeing the wound and on, and the rehabilitation coming off of the meds, and what it must have been like to have to see that towel not scrunch up when it was supposed to scrunch up. There's so much there to chew on and reflect on. But what I really want to do is just get final thoughts on what was the most important piece of this that you would want someone else to take with them. If this is the only 40 minutes they get to think about this, what is the one thing you want them walking away thinking about? Alex, I'm going to kick it to you first.
I would say that in the health and fitness world, often people think it's all about their own willpower and discipline. And both of those things are incredibly important, as illustrated in your story. But you cannot discount the power of a community that cares for the best in you. And like when we do what we're doing in Everyday Spy with like Spy Fit challenges, and individuals come in and they have a group of people who are working toward the same goal and they support one another, then that the exercise is intelligent, the nutrition is intelligent, the program is powerful. I hope so. I made it. But the community, the change that people are seeing, they will regularly say, it's because you guys want me to succeed.
Yeah.
That they'll do it when they can't. And that's illustrated just throughout your story. And I love that you're humble enough to say, like, I mean, I worked my butt off, but there were a lot of people in my corner. So for me, that would be the biggest thing that stands out for me, is that in health and fitness, your willpower and discipline really matters. The intelligence of your program really matters. But having people in your corner who support your endeavor and believe the best for you, that is game-changing.
Final thoughts, Gus?
Yeah, I mean, I think Alex nailed it. I agree with him 100%. And I think if I had to throw something in secondary to that, I think it's having the right mindset around whatever you're doing, recognizing that the community is helping you, be able to lean on those people, have a good mindset about who you are and what you're capable of. And just don't let yourself get into that mode of seeing, no matter how bad circumstances get, just don't let yourself get in that mindset of like, oh, I'm done. There's no getting over this. This is the obstacle that stops me. Because for me, that definitely could have been it. I mean, that was the hardest injury, certainly, but maybe one of the hardest moments or a couple of months that I've ever had to go through. But, you overcome it with community and with mindset and just keep on driving.
I'm never disappointed anytime we talk, and I'm always blown away at what the 2 of you can bring to the table in terms of knowledge and courage and just the tenacity to get through what you guys have gotten through, especially when I reflect on my own life and the very relative ease of my life in contrast to what you guys have been through, what you have dealt with, and what you have learned.